you guys hear me okay? It's all right? Okay. So, I'm so excited to be here. And like Dr. Little said, I feel like it was not that long ago that I was here, yet it was kind of getting to be that long ago. My son heard there was pizza, so he might walk in towards the end, but he won't eat any until after the blessing. Okay? I'm making sure my phone is on silent. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to a discussion, because I don't want to necessarily stand up here and lecture the whole time. But I do want to share experiences and lessons that I've had along the way. I've had a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. I have a whole lot more to learn. Even today, in a conversation that I had, I was thinking, man, there's a whole lot more I need to learn. And so let's talk about some of those things. As I was preparing, I should have probably prepared more, but you know, as an entrepreneur, you just get busy, right? And so a week ago, I was like, I really need to prepare for this. And then a few days ago, I was like, I really need to prepare for this. And then last night, I thought the same thing. And then this morning at noon, I was like, this meeting needs to end. I need to prepare. So anyway, we're going to get through this, and it's going to be real time. I think those are the best, right? So, life of an entrepreneur. So I texted a few of my friends, many of whom were students alongside me and are now entrepreneurs running successful businesses, far more successful even than anything I'm doing. And I said, hey, I'm speaking at BYU, a good old 710 today. What would you say? I was just super curious, not necessarily because I was going to share it here, but I just kind of was texting people and wanted to start some dialogue. So one of my board members, actually, I texted him. He and I were in this program and at the Marriott school at the same time. So I texted him. I texted another one of my board members. I texted, my assistant, who is like a millennial. As I was driving around with her today, I said, hey, what would you say? I was curious. My Uber driver, I asked him. Anyway, it was so fascinating to me, and I'm going to share some of these things. So my meeting this morning, first thing he said is like, just tell him life is hard. This guy who I was meeting with this morning runs a business, really successful, but yet he's going through a divorce. He was telling me, we met with the intention of talking about our two businesses and how we might work together, but instead the conversation was diverted, and we were talking about how he figures out how to work with his ex-wife and figuring out where, if his ex-wife moves to California, how he'll get custody of his kids. Life is hard. And I was talking about, I'm having seizures and I can't drive, and I wanted to talk about my business because that's way more fun, right? But that was what he was saying, and I agreed. Life is hard, but I don't want to leave or even begin with that message, but I think that's kind of a reality, right? And you're all facing your own challenges. Another one, I loved this. We went to school together here. He, successful investment banker in San Francisco. He texted, and he just said, I don't even know. I don't understand millennials. I don't even know what to say. That's like all he said. He's just like, I don't even know. And then somebody else, how about tell them, and this was like a whole lot of sass. This is my best friend who runs a business here. She will go unnamed, but you can figure out who it is really easily if you look at my social media posts. She said, how about you tell them, consider working somewhere for more than 2 years. Okay? Another person, how about tell them, and I say all of this with a lot of respect for you, please know that. Okay. Another person said, how about tell them, don't expect to graduate and make $150K and ownership in the company you're working at. And then my assistant said, how about you tell them that a career isn't just getting social media influencers and followers. Well, anyway, I share all of that, not with the negative tone that could come with, but I say that because there's a whole lot of noise out there, right? And there's a whole lot of things that you guys are hearing. And as I drove down here from Silicon Slopes today, I mean, I guess we're still in it, but I was in the heart of it in Lehigh at my office. I saw billboard after billboard of tech companies and really funny billboards recruiting employees, exciting things happening with, you know, companies that are starting. There's a lot of things happening, and there's a lot of things thrown at you and thrown at me, right? And I think a lot of these comments from my friends, granted, they come with a lot of sassiness, which I probably like exude from them because I like kind of bring it on myself. It comes from a place of, wow, there's a lot going on. And I think my message today is what I want to talk about and get your feedback and thoughts on is how do you kind of boil that down and figure out like what to do with that so that you don't feel like, to be cool. This is what I emailed someone last week because I had just like had enough. And I booked a ticket to LA because I just needed to get the heck out of here. And I went to LA for 48 hours because I knew if I went there to my favorite place to get a pedicure and my favorite sushi restaurant and to meet with a board member and a hotel that I really like. I could be sounding snobby right now, but I just knew like I needed some self-care. And I emailed someone and I said, hey, I'll be in LA if you can meet, because he would be a potential investor. And I said, I just need to get out of Silicon Slopes as it is and remind myself that I don't need to be a SaaS company and I don't need to be valued at $1 billion to feel cool. And that's what I emailed this potential investor. And I said it with a smiley face, but I kind of meant it. Do you guys ever feel that way? And you're only students, but can you kind of like get what I'm saying? I'm like seeing some head nods. Like, we're in a tech entrepreneurship lecture series. I kind of technically run a fintech, financial technology company, and I even feel that where I'm like, I am so not cool. Like, what am I even doing? You know, and do I even know anything? And I just need to like go get some sushi and like sit on the beach for a minute and remind myself that like it is gonna be okay. And like might be high tide right now, but like low tide's coming and it's gonna be okay, right? So I would suggest to all of you, sometimes when you're feeling that way, like go to your mental favorite sushi place, like I need to do sometimes physically. Okay, so this is kind of is a little snapshot of like where I've been spending my time. And it can kind of feel like that, like what? I have been like hopping around, but it has all been somewhat conscious. I started my career, if that's what you call it, here, and I wrote out goals for myself, and I didn't know necessarily, of course not, what companies I would be at, and I didn't have companies as a goal, but I had experiences that I wanted to acquire as a goal. So I wrote down, like, I really want to get experience as a CFO or, you know, in a finance role and eventually as a CFO, because I really wanted to understand a company from the financial perspective, right? So I said, okay, I want to gain experiences that are going to let me gain that eventual experience of really like how do you charter and navigate a business with that. And then I had another goal of I want to understand the operational side of business and be able to lead that way, right? With the eventual goal of I want to be CEO and I want to run my own businesses, not because I want to just be cocky and run my own businesses, but because I want to be a leader, and I recognize that I shouldn't leave room 710 and expect to be CEO over here, right? And sometimes with everything that's thrown at us, it can feel like it's fair to go from room 710 to CEO, and it's okay to not, okay? Give yourself time. And maybe you guys are all like, that's fine, we get it, but there's maybe a few of you in here who like feel the pressure that like, well, but other people are doing it. I need to be like CEO right now, and it's okay, you don't. So what I did is I had a professor here, an adjunct professor at BYU, and he had a successful career, and I just loved him to pieces. I was a TA for him, and I had a consulting job lined up. I was going to move to Seattle and do that, but I had in the back of my mind, oh, how cool would it be to like work for him, because he had talked about maybe forming a private equity fund. Well, one day I woke up to a call from him, and he said, hey Jill, do you want to form a private equity fund with me and do that? And I said, are you kidding me? And I'm like, is this for real? So I said yes, and so we did that. So formed Dolphin Capital, and I wasn't, partner from day one. Here I was working with a 45-year-old who'd had a successful career, and I was a 20-something who had to look up a lot of terms in Google while we were having conversations, right? And so I'm like, LP, right. And then I'm Googling, what's an LP? Oh, limited partner, right. And then I'm looking up, what's limited partner? I'm looking up the further definition of what limited partner is, right? And that's cool, because that just keeps happening in your career. And I think you should want that, right? I love being in conversations where I have to Google new terms. That's awesome. I love being around people. I wasn't where that needs to happen. I was in a fintech discussion roundtable last week that was put together by my law firm. And I was just telling Dr. Little, I was invited to this, and I thought it would be a room like this where I could just kind of sit in the back and just listen and soak it in. So I said, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to attend that. I want to hear what is going on with the landscape of fintech in Utah. Well, and I show up, and it's a round table discussion, literally. It was a board table that fits 12 people. And half the discussion was to talk about the startup environment in Utah and how do we support startup companies, fintech companies, and I was the only startup represented there. And believe me, I was looking up some terms on my phone while we were talking. And I would say to all of you, do what you can to be surrounding yourself with people and experiences and environments where you're needing to look up terms on Google, right? Because you're going to keep learning. And that's thankfully what I've been able to do, is keep learning. And so Dolphin Capital we formed, and we did that with the intention of investing in an area of companies that were underrepresented in terms of availability of capital. So a lot of capital at the time we did this was going towards technology companies, which is great. Not a lot of capital was available for consumer products and services. So what that meant for us is if we went and raised capital to invest in those businesses, we'd probably be able to get them for a good deal, right? Because there isn't a lot of capital chasing those businesses. So we could go to those businesses and say, not to take advantage of them, but to say, hey, we have capital, we can invest in your business, so let's do something really exciting here. So that's what we did in Dolphin Capital, and did that for about 10 years. Learned a whole lot of new terms. Had a blast. Looked at probably, 500 deals. I don't know, a lot. I mean, every day would be new deals, but to really dig in, let me flip back here to some of the logos of the companies that we actually did deals in. So who's heard of Ragnar? Yes. Okay. So we did Ragnar before it was Ragnar. They had done the Wasatch Back Relay for 2 years and came to us when I was a TA in that class. One of the students had put it on, and we said, hey, we think there's something more here. What if we created a series of events? And so I remember, it's so fun, because I remember we were sitting in the brand agency office when we created this logo, and we were playing around with it. Anyway, so it's just so fun to create things, right? I think. And if you're sitting in this room, you probably think there's something to it, right? There's something fun there. So we did Ragnar, who's heard of Winder Farms, delivers dairy and other perishable products from grocery stores. So we did that. I learned more about milk than I ever thought there was to learn. Foundation Source was supporting private foundations, so family offices, when they have wealth that they're investing in supporting communities and things. That was really fun. Okay, who's heard of sea monkeys? When we were kids, like, you could order them out of magazines, right? So I never knew this, but it's actually, like, the Great Salt Lake is the largest source of brine shrimp, which is sea monkeys, and that is the largest and the best feed for aquaculture. And the largest market for that is like China and Asia, where they're raising fish. Anyway, so Dolphin, in partnership with some other funds here in Utah, created a cooperative, because before we did this, it was this really combative, highly competitive market where every year they'd go harvest the brine shrimp from the lake and create a very competitive market, but then pricing was all over the place with the brine shrimp. So then we created a cooperative and were able to basically control pricing for the world. It was awesome. Okay, and anyway, and then after like brine shrimp, then we were doing chocolates. I mean, it was just like such an experience. So I guess what's my point here? My point is that I kind of started with my goal of gaining experience, and I got to gain a lot of experience through the Dolphin Fund, if I go back to this slide, right? So we were investing in businesses. I worked with great people who I learned a whole lot from, and I assure you this, I could have gone somewhere and made more money, because actually when I got that offer, this is hilarious still, Eric, who called me and said, hey, do you want to do this with me? He said, hey, how much are you going to make in this job that I'd already signed for? And I told him, I don't even remember what it was. And he said, okay, I'll give you half that. So, I mean, I surely could have made more. But my purpose was not, okay, well, let me go seek after where I can make the most money right now. Because I would probably I wouldn't be where I am now had I taken, the highest paying job right out of school necessarily. And I think it's probably safe for me to say that it would be that case moving forward, that not to say you always take the lowest paying opportunity, but that you look at the value of opportunities is maybe what I'd say there. Look at the value, and sometimes that is going to be, yes, I will sell my company right now because of the value that you will pay me, right? So I definitely don't mean always take the lowest paying, but I mean look at the overall value, and that isn't just financial value at the current moment, okay? I say that strongly with conviction. While I'm on this point, any questions or thoughts on the Dolphin Capital experience? Anything? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious. So, I mean, he just kind of decided that he was going to just start a venture capital firm. I'm not a finance major.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what goes into that kind of process of starting up a VC firm. But
Yeah.
I'm sure that there needs to be a lot of capital to start a venture capital firm.
Yes.
How was that for you? What type of experience was that with raising the capital to start your own venture capital?
Yeah. Well, it helped that he had had successful exits, and he had already made some investments that we could roll into this fund, right? And so that's where it was really helpful to kind of saddle up to that, and the relationships that he had that we were able to leverage. So amazingly, an individual whom he had background with said, hey, I really like what you're doing, I like your approach to business. If you ever want to start a private equity fund, I'll commit capital to that. And so I don't think Eric would have ever done it, because he did not want to go out on the road, as they call it, and raise a private equity fund. But because it came with that sort of strong commitment, we were able to get 80% plus of the commitments that we needed, and from a small group of investors. So that helped a lot. And it also helped, good question, because we were able to have a very tight, sort of self-controlled structure to the deals that we did. So, good question. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know it mentions that you were there for 10 years. Can you talk about a little bit of your experience of when you started there and then your progression within the firm, and then how your roles kind of changed and what that was like for you?
Yeah. So within those, call it 10 years, we only had 4 of us on the team. And within that time, we all were managing the fund plus really taking management roles in our portfolio. And that was different. That's different than what you'll see in most private equity venture capital firms. So we took the approach of, rather than a larger portfolio, a number of businesses you invest in, and less time that you take per, we said we're going to invest in fewer businesses and more time per. And so it's just a very different approach. But we took that approach because we said we're not necessarily investors by trade, we're entrepreneurs by trade. And so we're going to continue being entrepreneurs, and we're going to invest human and financial capital. And I wanted to speak to this point. We said we're going to put dollars in, but we're going to partner and pair, I should say, the dollars we're putting in with our involvement. So it's not just saying, write a check, we hope you do it. So we were partnering with companies that needed that support. So we weren't going into a company and saying, oh great, you have a really great management team, step aside, we're here. We were partnering with companies like Ragnar Relay, where they didn't have a management team and they didn't have that experience. So it was so sort of segueing back to your question, it was a really great experience, because my time really throughout the entire 10 years was balanced between looking at deals, structuring deals, closing deals, and running businesses. And there were times in there, like the final 3 years, where I was entirely focused on at Manduca, which was the yoga company, because I just stepped in as CFO and COO and said, I'm just going to focus, I need to focus entirely, 98% on this. But other than that period of time, it was a really neat experience and very different than most private equity firms, because it was balanced between investing and operating. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah.
When you're managing funds, like, how does the equity compensation go to the people managing? Because say you fund a company and you get 10% or 20% equity.
Yeah.
Like, how does that carry over to the people managing the funds?
So
do you get a percentage of that, or a return on their investment for a while, or what?
Yeah, there's the people managing the fund. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so me and my partners in the fund. Yeah. There's a thing, you'll hear it, it's called 2 and 20. So the number 2 and the number 20 is the typical economic breakdown, which is 2% of the fund size that you can take in management fees a year to operate your fund, so that you can afford to pay yourself a salary, so you can afford to pay lawyers to draft documents, so you can fly to see deals, so you can pay for all the costs of managing and operating your fund. So that's the 2%. The 20% is your equity upside. Okay. So every fund, though, you can structure differently, and ours was a little different than that, but that's the benchmark. Yeah. Yep. So you're all on the same team, right? You don't want to, you have to pay that 2% back, though. So it's not just free money. When you exit your deals, you're paying that back. So you're not just great, let me just spend up. So if you don't need to spend it, you're probably going to say okay, maybe I just won't.
So the 20% you can get up to 20% equity in those companies? Or
You get 20%, I should say, the return of
what
your upside that you earn.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What you earn.
Yeah, the upside you earn. Yeah, and your investors in the fund get the 80%.
80%.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. So you're all on the same team. So you want to structure really beneficial deals for you and your investor, and you and your investors are really aligned to do great deals and create value. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and Beck.
I'd love to hear more about your investing thesis. I really liked how you talked about I think it was consumer products and services.
Yeah.
How there's not a ton of capital usually allocated
Yeah.
to these. Did that affect your guys' expected return? Did you think that might be lower?
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to kind of just share how you guys came up with this thesis.
Yeah.
And what motivated you guys to focus on that.
Yeah. Well, so the last question was what motivated us, and I would say what motivated us and my partners, because they had more industry experience than I did at that point, right, was personal experience, because their personal experience was a lot of an interest, was a lot of that consumer seeing the space and need, and also having done deals in the space. And we did forecast that returns would be different than if we were doing a venture capital firm. But also the risk is different. So risk reward is very different for, like, my buddy Sid, you might have heard his name, Sid Cromenhook. He runs Peak Ventures. When he's doing deals, he's saying, hey, I need one of these deals. I don't want to speak for him, but he wouldn't hate it. Okay. He's going to say, hey, I need one of these 50 to really hit a major home run here. And I'm going to plan on, I don't know his numbers, 300 of them I'm not going to hear from again. And that's going to be that. Some, 100 of whatever the numbers are. There's a very different profile mix there for the venture type firms. Whereas for us, we said we're not doing a single deal here that isn't going to return for us, because we're putting not only financial capital in, but also our time. And so if we go in and do a deal and it doesn't, at least at the bare minimum, we need to get a return of capital back, but really we need to get like 3x return on our worst deal, right? And so, and then our best deal, we weren't forecasting like a tech deal of, hey, we might have 100x return here, because that's just not what you're going to get in a consumer product deal. But how it all kind of nets out, it's really fascinating to me when you take these astronomical potential returns in a tech fund, but yet the varying mix, and then you took our economics. It's so fascinating how it all kind of comes out in the wash, and it's pretty similar when it all nets out. Yeah.
So with that, over the course of that 10 years, did you have any deals that went completely sour?
Yeah, we don't need to talk about it. Yes.
But how did that affect you personally, and also your partner and your company?
Yeah, we did. So, not to like call it any names specifically, and I'm kind of like half kidding and saying, but it is painful when you have a deal that doesn't work out. Because like for me, I was the one modeling all these out, and I'm like, was my formula wrong? And yeah, formulas can be wrong, right? And market factors changed, and people changed, and just the Walmart deal didn't come through, or we thought we'd get this $1 million PO, or we thought that, whatever macro or micro conditions, things were different than we planned. So you asked, how did it affect me personally? I'm going to have to talk to my therapist about that. But I think personally, I have recognized that I learned so much from all of those, and so much. And I definitely take all those learnings with me. Here's something I've been like thinking about. It's not fully developed, so don't judge me for it. There's a song I like that says, "Is life more than the sum of its parts?" And I think that like in business deals, it's the absolute value, not just the sum of its parts, meaning the positives and the negatives, netting each other out. But I think it's the absolute value, if you get what I mean. Meaning the negatives are positives, I'm kind of nerding out here right now, but like all of those negatives or the deals that didn't work out are just as much a positive. Maybe not in the net return for our fund, but in the deals we did thereafter, perhaps more than compensated for it because of lessons we learned. So I think all in all, it's okay. Yeah. And there's something there. You might hear from me later about the absolute value of life. I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'm curious actually, what was one of your home runs? What did the return look like, and what made it so amazing?
Okay, so on this, you see the Manduca logo here. Has anyone heard of that brand? Okay, a few of you. Well, that makes me feel pretty good. This isn't necessarily the market for it, but Manduca is a premium yoga lifestyle brand. And we did that deal in the end of 2012. I moved out to LA for that deal, and we were really excited about it. I can't necessarily speak numbers to it, but it was a fantastic deal. And I think I say fantastic not just because of the numbers. The numbers were great because for a few reasons. We got it for a great deal, I think, because we had a great relationship with the founder and the CEO, and he recognized our value and so wanted to do a deal with us. And it was more than simply structuring a financial deal. And that was really important to him and us. So I think that helped that we entered in a really good position and a good structure. Because sometimes you can do deals where maybe you have a lot of debt at the beginning and you're just like not in a really strong foundation to start. So we were in a strong foundation to start, is what I'd say. That helped. I'd also say the industry and the market, we entered at the perfect point and timing. We had really great product line. We had really great product line opportunities, so we launched apparel. We recognized that as an opportunity. We were just in mats, so the yoga mats, when we started. We recognized that as an opportunity, so we had the roadmap when we did the deal to launch apparel, and we did that. And so the timing really lined up. And then there were a lot of people really interested, a lot of funds and strategic partners, strategic buyers really interested in the space. So I think things just lined up, and we had a really good team. So things lined up internally, externally, market, product, financially lined up to make that work. Okay? Great questions. Okay. And, okay, so we have 10 minutes, and we haven't even talked wedding line. I want to get your thoughts. Okay. So are we cool to move on to wedding line? Okay, did you guys get the gist of it at the start? We finance weddings. So think of it like a car payment. You go in to buy a car, and if they made you write a $20,000 check for your car, you'd be like, what? First of all, I'm sure all of you would be like, what's a check, right? And then you'd say, I'm not going to write a check for $20,000, but thankfully car dealers have a solution through their financing partners, and they say, fill out this simple application, we'll get you going with financing. What we're doing is bringing to market that same simple solution for weddings. Why weddings, you might ask? Well, here's the State of the Union. Do you get that pun? State of the Union. I came up with that one night and I was like, good, okay. All right, State of the Union. So here, why weddings and why events? $56 billion industry. What else do I have in here? So this is a fantastic point. Well, first of all, it's a consumer that I want. So the consumer, who's getting married? Who's getting married in this country? It's people who are generally educated. They're sitting in rooms like this. They're working or will be working because they're getting out of school. They're going to be spending $25,000 on average for their wedding. The average, not here in Utah County per se, but the average pre-book period, as you call it, for a wedding is about 11 months for a wedding. The reason I like that is I can have 11 months of, call it collateral, on my financing, because if you don't pay me in those 11 months, then you ain't getting your wedding, right? So there's 2 million weddings a year. Like I said, this consumer is a really valuable piece of my business, because not only do I like you because you're a really positive credit profile for me, because you're making money, you're educated, you're going to pay this debt off, and you want your wedding, but also there's continued lifetime value, you follow that term, of you as you proceed in your life, because you're combining households with your newly found spouse, and other companies, brands, etc. are probably going to want to know who you are, because you're at the best intersection of life, right? So I really like this consumer and this point in time, right? And so I like the product itself of financing weddings. I like the consumer, and I like the time. And so that's really what drew me to this. And I think Dr. Little mentioned this, that I was running an event services business. So we were working with all of these same consumers, same customers. And since I'm the finance nerd, I'm going through all these numbers, because we were about a $50 million business, 5,000 events a year we were putting on, and I'm looking at the numbers saying, well, this is great, but how are they paying for this? And that's really what led me to this. And I'm much more interested in the scalable businesses, and this, for me, is much more scalable than needing to staff an event venue every Friday and Saturday night, right, across the country and the world. So this allows me to scale, and I think you guys are going to be talking about scale and reading about it too. It sounds like in some of your materials. So that's what Wedding Line's doing. That's what I'm spending my time on. Let's see what else is in here. So we talked about this. So then I have a partnership relationship with the venues. So the venue has this option now to take to their customer and say, well, let's get the add-on packages here, because now it's affordable, now it's approachable that you're going to use Wedding Line. So let's add in all of these extra services or things you were maybe considering before but weren't going to add on. Let's do that now that you're using Wedding Line. And so anyway, so the venue is really my sales force, and that is a zero cost marketing tool for me, right? And we have technology that makes that end to end, so it's really streamlined for the customer to apply, sign their loan, and then make their monthly payments from there. Yeah.
I'm curious, do you have a software that you use to originate the loans? Like
Yeah.
partnering with other people for that?
We have a partner software.
Okay.
Yep, software as a service. I'm actually flying out there to Texas right after this to go finish our next round of implementation. So yeah, we didn't need to create it. So they weren't in this space because no one is. So we went and found another similar space and said, what's the #1 software in similar spaces? And then went to them and said, hey, could we make that work for our space? And so we're using existing software, yep, and customizing it for what we're doing, which is really great. So we're able to do things like where you say dealer, because they're doing car dealerships, that's their largest customer. Hey, do a search all, replace value. Where you have dealer, say partner. Where you say this, say that, right? Where you say car, say event. It's been really simple. Why did I have this slide here? I think it was to say that I think my point earlier of surrounding yourself with people and experiences and everything that makes you smarter is what I'm trying to do here. And I look at my board and they make me smarter. I was texting with, Reed. Reed is at Acima. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them. They're a fintech company also. Started 5 years ago, and they're going to do $600 million in revenue this year. Insane. He started up an airline. He was at the Federal Reserve. I mean, just do that, because you'll learn new words. Okay. Yeah, so tech partner, like you said, we're using Defy Solutions, and other, you know, software solutions that get us there. So, okay, we just have a few minutes left. Here's maybe one last point that I'll use. So I was at my office this morning, and I'm using one of those co-working spaces because we don't have a huge team, and we don't need a huge team. So we had a team meeting, and we sit in there, and there's a whiteboard. The previous company had not, you don't need to worry about all the detail in there, okay? But the previous company that had used the room before us didn't erase what they wrote on the whiteboard. And so then it was a good minute where two of my team members were looking at the board like, did we write that? Because so many of the words, and I wrote some of them up here, were what we talk about too, okay? And that is the case. And that's why I put at the header, insert company here. So much of what you all are gonna go out and do could be insert company, meaning you're gonna be talking about a lot of these things. Ease of use, you're gonna be at maybe technology companies, right? You're gonna be talking about customer retention and lifetime value, and well, how do we upsell, and what's our product line plan, and what's our calendar, and what's our implementation plan, and all of these terms, right? And the fact that like my team couldn't tell, well, was this us or is this, right? And I think my point there is this stuff's everywhere, right? You're gonna be able to plan retention and perceived value and referral and saturation and percentages and all that stuff anywhere you go. So what I would suggest is continue learning, focus on value, not necessarily what you're getting paid. Focus on value that you're getting, who you're working with, and what you're learning, and the value will come if you focus on it and if you bring it, right? If you bring the value will come, and that's absolutely what I have found in my career as I've had that as my focus. We've talked about these things, right? We've talked about my focus of not just at Dolphin, but I think throughout all of the businesses of, and hopefully you've seen this you've heard this as we've talked, of investing time, money, whatever that is, and also operating, the combination of those things. We talked about human capital when I was at Dolphin, where we said to our investors, we're going to invest financial capital, but we're also going to put us in there. We're gonna be both, and I'm doing that now with Wedding Line too, right? I'm getting investor capital, but I'm in there, and my team's in there, and we're putting investments into that. And I think for your career also, I'll end with this point, which is focus on your foundation, just like your businesses. Focus on your foundation so you can scale, and it will come. So with that, thanks for the time, and the pizza's here.